This screencast is about price discriminating monopoly. You see a picture here of an airline because this is one of the major examples that's given in AP Econ as an example. One of the things I think that it's really important to recognize here is that even though they call it a price discriminating monopolist, you're going to see that these examples are things that apply to oligopolies and monopolistically competitive firms. And so even though it's in this section, it can happen to any of the imperfectly competitive type of markets. Students sometimes get confused by that. Okay, so here's what we're looking at, and this is the difference between the two graphs at how you are looking at this discriminating monopolist. What a discriminating monopolist can do is that it can charge a different price for each person or each group of people. And so that's what makes it different. If you walk into a store or wherever it is that you're purchasing something, based on a certain criteria, you might be charged one price because of your willingness and ability, and somebody else might be charged a lower price because of their willingness and ability. In the case over here on the left, this is not the case. This is the demand curve that we had always seen. This should be labeled demand equals average revenue equals price. You have the downward sloping demand curve, and you have the marginal revenue curve that's less than the demand curve, because with each additional unit that they sell, they have to lower the price for not just that next unit, but for all previous units. In order to figure out the profit maximizing output, you use that formula of MR equals MC. In order to figure out the price, you take it up to the demand curve, and that gives you the price that they're charging at. Economic profit is price minus ATC times quantity, and so this blue shaded area here shows you the economic profit of a single price monopolist. Over here, you have a price discriminating monopolist. And the biggest difference, if you notice here, is that your demand curve is equal to your marginal revenue curve. It's not perfectly elastic like we saw with the perfectly competitive, but it's downward sloping. But the reason that it's equal to the marginal revenue curve is because with each additional unit that they sell, they do not have to lower the price for all previous units. Rather, one person at this quantity is going to pay this price, and then the next person, quantity number 2, that person's going to get charged that price. And the third person's going to get charged that price. And the fourth person's going to get charged that price. And so when you're looking at the profit maximizing output, it is still MR equals MC. It's just that they're in two completely different locations. A discriminating monopolist will always produce a larger quantity. Okay? And so then you get into how you figure out economic profit. You can't use the formula of price minus ATC times quantity because your price is different for each unit. And so what you have to do is in order to figure out you have to use the formula of total revenue minus total cost. And in order to figure out the total revenue, you have to add up each price that the quantities are sold at. So if this was $10 plus $9 plus $7 plus $5 plus $4, that would give you your total revenue. Now the cost is not dependent upon output. Sometimes you'll have a perfectly elastic ATC that equals your marginal cost, but the other way, if you're given a graph that looks like this, you can still use the same cost per unit, so it's ATC times quantity. And so when you're looking at the formula, you're going to have total revenue minus total cost. Outside of the fact that the discriminating monopolist will always produce a larger quantity, they will always get a higher profit. And so if there's a way that they're able to distinguish in the market between these two and be able to do this, then it's totally to their advantage to be able to do it. This happens because you have elasticities with the price, and so they're able to have this market where you have these different components that go with it. Another great example would be movie tickets. When I go to the movies with my kids, they're charged a different price than I am because of our willingness and ability to be able to purchase it. And so that's where you have another example of the discriminating monopolist. Okay, this is taken from your book, and what you need to think about is economic profit, which again, we said if you can discriminate, you're going to have a larger economic profit than you are if you're a single price monopolist. And when you're looking here at how they're figuring it out, again, you're looking at the price of that quantity minus the cost, and that is going to give you the different economic profits that go along with it. And so if you have a quantity of one that's sold at this higher price of $12, so you would have a total revenue of $12 plus another one that's sold at $10, so that would be $22, minus your ATC of 5, so, and you've sold 2 products, so 22 minus 5 times 2 is 10, 22 minus 10, you're going to have an economic profit of 12. If you look at the consumer surplus on this, it's these white triangles right here. And so that's where you're going to see this is the only consumer surplus that you have. In this case here, what is happening is that the producer is selling each component at the price that somebody is willing and able to buy it. Over here, they're willing and able to pay a higher price, but they don't have to because they fit into this grouping here of it at low. And so, and this one here with the price at high, they would be willing and able to pay more. So that's why you have consumer surplus. In this one, it is completely based off somebody's willingness and ability. Maybe I see that as something where if you were to go to a flea market, and you're going back and forth, and you end up getting charged the price that you are willing and able to pay, and you wouldn't have been willing and able to pay more. So that's where I could see that one going. Or I just brought a car, and so maybe that would be another one, because I've got this price that I'm willing and able to pay, and that's the one that I'm bargaining for, and then that's what we agree on. But somebody else might have a different price, and so that's where they're at with it. In this case here, this is their profit again, because it's price that they sold minus the cost of that unit, and then you add them all up. There is absolutely no consumer surplus. Okay, and so this is where then you would get into that you have no consumer surplus, whereas this one here, you have this consumer surplus in the white triangles. So be able to know how to calculate economic profit and recognize consumer surplus, and are they charging the price that people are willing and able to sell it at, or are they kind of grouping it into these different areas, and then that's how you are able to have some of the consumer surplus. The quantities do not have to go in increments of 1. That's what I was using in my example. But you could have 10 people that fit into the high, and you could have another 15 people that fit into the low. So you would have a quantity here actually of 25. So it doesn't have to be in increments of 1.